Welcome back to the CTO Playbook, the podcast dedicated to helping CTOs excel. Would you say yes if you were asked to lead through chaos with no clear plan, little information, and no guarantee of success? That's exactly the kind of challenge Corey Hart has built a career on, from scaling humanitarian operations from 0 to thousands in days, to navigating political storms and keeping teams united under extreme pressure. In this episode, we break down his crisis scaling playbook, why simplicity beats complexity, how to turn specialists into early strategists, and the mindset shift that makes yes possible, even when the stakes couldn't be higher. I'm your host, Adam Horner. As a coach, I help CTOs from startups to enterprises to lead with clarity, confidence, and strategic impact. And before we get into scaling in a crisis, I want to share something that I built to help you on your leadership journey. If you've ever felt like there's no playbook for being a CTO, then you're not alone. I've been there too, and I hear it week in, week out from the CTOs and tech leaders that I coach and work with. That's why I started this podcast over a year ago, because technology leadership is challenging, and figuring it out alone makes it even harder. Now I've brought everything together under the same brand. The CTO Playbook is a home for this podcast, a growing community of CTOs and coaching programs designed to help you grow as a technology leader. If you think about your leadership journey like a mountain hike, a climb with many routes, then CTO Basecamp helps you build breadth and clarity into the foundations of your role. CTO Elevate sharpens your strategic impact, and CTO Ascent, that's a path you can take anytime. It's your personalized coaching journey designed around your specific needs, whether you're just starting out or already leading at the highest levels. Your path, your pace, your playbook. The first CTO Basecamp cohorts are now available to book and will help you as a technology leader to strengthen and broaden your leadership foundations. If you're ready to stop figuring it all out the hard way and start leading with clarity, confidence, and strategic impact, reserve your spot on a cohort that works well for you. You can learn more about CTO Basecamp, CTO Ascent, and what's coming in the near future with CTO Elevate at thectoplaybook.com. But now let's switch from mountains to scaling in a crisis. Corey, welcome to the CTO Playbook. It's been really looking forward to having this conversation, because you reached out after listening to the episode with Warren Beasley, which was one of the first ones we did. And you said something that really stuck with me. You said leadership compatibility is just as critical as technical skill when it comes to scaling under pressure, which I really loved. But let's start off by giving our listeners a bit of a feel for who you are. Can you give us the sort of in a nutshell version of your career?
Sure. Yeah, the in a nutshell would be a really curious dude who just loves running into uncertainty and surrounding himself with really, really solid folks along the way. That's me in a nutshell.
Absolutely brilliant. Well, very succinct. And so one of the things I know we want to talk about today is one of the projects I mean, talking about running into uncertainty, New York City and the asylum seeker project that you worked on there. So can you just sort of tell us a little bit? I mean, obviously we got up to that, but what sort of things had you done before leading up to that sort of led people to think that, Corey is the person to help us in this really quite challenging situation?
Right. Yeah. I had done quite a few challenging things, and my network is fairly vast. Right. It's maybe like thin and really, really wide. Right. And
right.
So, and the things that I say yes to are just, folks are like, why would you have done that? Like, that is so silly. So it stands out in people's minds. And so they may have met me at a conference, or someone knows somebody, and they're like, well, you told me about this one guy who did that one thing. I need him. Right. And that's how a lot of opportunities find me.
So because of the fact you said yes to other things, people sort of say, hey, I'll probably say yes to this.
It's like, that guy's insane. Let's call him. Yeah.
Fantastic. And so give us an idea of some of the actual things you worked on there, because there's been, there's been some interesting projects that you've worked on, and the flavor and color of some of those is fascinating.
Right. Well, I spent a lot of time in the hospitality industry. In my younger days, I had a long music career that led into opening up and running nightclubs and bars. And then that led to not wanting to be the owner, but that helped a lot of others. And so I turned around hospitality concepts. A lot of moving parts there, and a lot of,
it's a complex industry,
emotion.
Right?
And then I there was a contract with a international cruise line that we helped navigate the reopening after the lockdowns. You have to surveil all of the passengers. You don't want these things being petri dishes, and I'm not a population health dude, but I'm an operations guy. And so as long as you surround yourself with a really great team, I was able to go and make some really great impact there. Later, I helped a global shipper revamp their entire call center from like hardwired on the, into the wall kind of call center folks into the cloud. And this was like tens of thousands of seats implementation across the planet. Again, why did I say yes to that? I don't know. But that was a lot of fun. It was a small team that took that on. And then when it came up for this other opportunity with the city and state of New York, there was someone on that project that was like, yep, Corey's the guy. Let's give him a call. We need somebody here in 4 days. I'm sure he's available.
Wow. So the commonality across those, and if I've understood it right, is fairly large-scale, people-oriented projects, complex operations, and a short time lead or time frame to get things done in. Is that sort of a summary of the key parts of those?
Yeah. Yep. I would agree with you on that. And that's whether you have the resources to get it done or not. It's easier. It's much easier when you have just a bunch of money to throw at something, right? But sometimes you're pretty resource constrained and still just got to get it done.
So it comes with a bucket of uncertainty too, in terms of what you've got available to work with. Yeah. Hey, so let's talk about this New York City asylum situation then. So just tell me about sort of the background to it, so we can sort of just set the scene for those people listening. And then tell us about your initial role and what you knew about it at the beginning. What was it that was at stake?
Sure. So in general, we had a city and state of New York that was receiving thousands of folks from all over the country, whether they were just immigrants or asylum seekers. They were all pouring into New York. And New York had to think of a very, very effective way to receive, house, feed, surround these folks with like legal services and support services, healthcare, get kids in school, basically, just scaffold and stand up an entire humanitarian response effort.
What year was this? What sort of global event was this in response to?
Well, there was just some surge of traffic across the U.S. border on the southern and northern borders, and a response of some of the states there were to actually just ship these folks up to the cities and states that were so-called like sanctuary cities, or folks that would openly accept these humans. And New York City is a unique environment because since the 80s, they had a law that said the city had to house someone if they asked for it.
Right. And New York has got a long history with that because it was one of the sort of main entry points for people coming to the United States in the very first place a couple of 100 years ago as well. So it's not as if it's a new thing for New York, but there was this sort of influx of people to cope with that.
Yeah. Yes. And I'm not sure there might have been a better place for folks to to land because while much of the city was alarmed, also there was a lot of openness amongst the community.
Yeah, it's one of those hallmarks of New York, isn't it, that openness? So, I mean, from what I understand, you were one of the first 4 people when this was sort of looked at as a problem and asked to sort of stand up a response. So, yeah. I mean, that's beyond, it's tens of thousands of people, right, that were coming in?
Well, they were, and there were numerous contractors that were working with the city, and we were one of the many contractors. And so a colleague of mine had said, "Hey, it's time. You need to get yourself here," and really didn't understand or know where exactly I was going when I was actually left West Michigan, where I'm based out of, but finding my way to the site where we were at and seeing what kind of operations were currently in play. And then also understanding, okay, we're not really sure how fast or when this thing is going to scale, but we got to be ready for it.
And so when was the moment when you sort of thought this is going to be a monster?
Yeah, well, I was preparing myself, like as I was flying over, I was reading some of the news and some of the articles, and there was some controversy, and it was then that I was like, wow, this is kind of complicated. And I think that we're just going to be in the spot where it's like, all right, well, it's not about blame. It's not about like how big the mess is or where did it come from. It's just about like, hey, let's just take care of business.
So you were already in the air when you had an inkling that the complexity and the scale of this was going to be something else.
Yeah.
Talk about saying yes when you don't have so much information. That's amazing.
Yeah, but it's cool when you surround yourself with folks that are used to being and acting in those situations, because you just kind of have this collective understanding of, it's gonna be all right. We got this.
So did you have an idea of what to do right away, or did you end up kind of figuring everything out pretty much, on the fly, seat of your pants kind of approach to the challenges that you faced?
Well, luckily, this type of thing isn't without some sort of initial process or initial framework, or some overall guidelines of what it is we're doing, who we're serving, how we're doing it, expectations. But then between that, there's a lot of uncertainty and gray area, things that haven't been filled in or written out. And this is a largely human situation. So humans have a really great way of coming up with really inventive ways to mess with a system or an operation, right? Like, oh, okay. Like, we didn't expect that was going to be something they would have to deal with, or, oh, okay, we thought this would be a really great tech solution to something, but nope, not at all. Let's rethink that. That should actually belong to a human. Thinking on your feet like that, and always being open to challenge and surprise,
I mean, talking about challenges and surprises, were there any moments when it sort of nearly went off the rails, when you sort of thought, oh, shit?
Well, there were some moments, yeah, sure, where the city says, "Hey, we have a couple hundred folks here that we've got to get out. We've got to make room for more people that are coming, and you need to find a spot for them." And so we had one team that was their only job was to find housing, and at a moment's notice, we had to be able to stand that up inside that. Particularly if it was a hotel, we'd have to say, all right, yep, guess what? In 3 hours, the bus is arriving with hundreds of folks, and we have to intake and get these folks sorted and do it in a way that when they get there, because obviously these are folks with their own levels of uncertainty getting off the bus in a strange place. Basically like, hey, stand up a living room and be like, come on in, welcome, like, how can we help you, right this way? Maybe not a full red carpet hotel experience, but the best you can do, because you're dealing with folks and families too. Yeah,
I mean, when you've got a few people traveling, that's a family holiday. When you've got tens of people traveling, that's sort of a package trip. When you've got hundreds of people, it's just a different number, isn't it? I mean, it's out of this world.
Yeah.
And so what sort of kind of emotional and operational pressure were you personally under? Because it sounds to me as though when you're in that situation, you've jumped in willingly, there's an excitement and there's a thrill. There's I get to be the problem solver, but at the same time, there's got to be a bucket load of pressure on you too.
Sure. Sometimes in the hyperscale, it's difficult to add, especially human resource, when you need it. So as one is scaling up and as one is really trying to respond the best they can, and you really just do have a few hours window to respond. Sometimes that means doing the job of a few people, and sometimes it means doing that for maybe a couple days in a row until you can get the right bodies in the right places and do the training and getting the protocols and obviously an environment like that is not for everyone. So there tends to be some interesting turnover.
Yeah, so I mean there are people who thrive in this kind of scenario, and there are the people who just generally don't. They tend to be the ones who like more certainty, predictability, and it's just not their environment in the slightest, right? I mean, I've always said I quite like a crisis. It's weirdly clarifying, when there's certain rules that you can sidestep or bend in a crisis moment, and then there are other things that still hold rigidly true, and knowing which is not always the simplest for everybody.
Yeah, and
I always like the fact that you sort of get that slow down feeling, don't you, when everything's in a crisis? Like, okay, there's just this one or two things I need to solve, and you can really feel what matters most in the moment. But I mean, you spoke about a few key principles that helped you do that. So can you just take us through a few of those?
Related to what you were just talking about, there's that identifying what's the signal and what's the noise, right? When you're presented with a lot of complexity, like what do I actually have to take care of, and what do I have to take care of, like right now? Biggest thing. I'm just always open to, okay, yes, this is the problem. Like, I'm into it. It's mine. I own this. It's not about finding someone else to push it off onto. I'm really good at bringing teams and vendors together and delegating, but a lot of times it's like, okay, this is my ball. I got this. So And I get in those situations by saying yes a lot.
And one of the hardest challenges in those situations is sort of doing your own internal stack rank of, okay, these are the two things that are the most important right now. Everything else is just going to have to wait. Do you have any sort of personal rules or rubrics to help you with that bit? Because for me, I found that was one of the most challenging areas of, okay, what is actually really important and what really has to wait?
If I'm lucky enough to have folks around me, definitely relying on the team to help with those decisions if you have time for that. A lot of times I'm working with folks that are either, they're W-2s, they're contractors, or they're vendors, or a mix of all three. And each one of them has their own priorities and they have their own limitations. Understanding what the limitations are, where they can show up, how they can show up, what kind of bandwidth they have. Really coming to every situation with the openness and candor that it deserves. That way we can rank things honestly, and it's okay to say no. As much as I'm a yes person and a people pleaser, it's important to know what the limitations are.
And how do you encourage that? Do you literally just tell people this is the way I want people to behave in this situation, or is there some way in which you encourage that kind of approach? The openness, I guess over communication is one of the key parts of it, and making it such that saying no is okay, is it? Because that isn't something that's natural in all cultures, for example.
Yeah, that's a good point. And for me, those conversations happen on the first onboarding, the first moments we meet, and then those types of behaviors are demonstrated nonstop. So, and often we have to talk about it continuously. It may feel boring for leaders to cover those things over and over and over, but that's necessary to keep everyone in lockstep.
And I think that's something that a lot of tech leaders overlook. We sort of think, I tell the computer once, the computer knows. People, I need to tell them again and again and again, and that kind of gets boring, or I feel like I'm, nannying them or something. But what you just said is that even in the crisis, you're still repeating things again and again and again, because that's how we literally get things across to people. I think that's a really crucial point.
Yeah, and you have to get through the noise to them, because a lot of times the folks are just real busy with things that are in front of them. So they're not always open for that kind of clarity. So just nice little repeat sometimes. Hey, focus. Yeah. Let's do this. We got this. Yeah,
keep repeating it until they're in the mindset where it'll land and. It'll be them at one of the 8 or 10 times you say it to them. Yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
Did you get much pushback on this sort of level of expectation? Did you have any sort of moments? I mean, you mentioned the onboarding there, which sounds like a very crucial part of the way you brought people into the project. But did you ever get much in terms of pushback on the expectation on either that communication or the openness or the ability to say no?
Yes, of course. Not very much, especially when you have an existing team with a lot of really great inertia. Folks, when they come on board, they're like, okay, this just seems to be how things work. And making sure that everyone is operating and with that mindset is really important. And as soon as there's someone who is maybe fostering any kind of other ways or discomfort, then figure out what it is that's in their way. And it could just be a mindset thing for them. It could be a blocker. It could be a concern that is theirs to hold. But other times it's maybe you're not the right fit.
Right. Okay. And I guess in a crisis, you've got absolute leeway to be able to choose who you have around you. And if somebody's not a right fit, there's a very, very quick decision, I guess, in that scenario.
Yeah. And sometimes people really want to grow. And so there's I'm not always looking for the most qualified folk to put into a certain position. I'm looking for the eagerness, the curiosity, willingness to learn, and ability to show up. Just keep showing up. A lot of things can be taught.
Absolutely. I think that point about showing up is one that I mentioned a lot as well. I did a whole episode on showing up as a key quality of leadership. But I think that's really amazing what you just said about, even in a crisis. I think most people have the instinct, and I need people who've been there, done that before. But you're saying that even in that situation, you're looking for the people who've got the hunger, the passion, the willingness to learn and figure things out over those people who've got the track record, the playbook, the experience.
Sometimes, yeah. It's helpful if you have some sort of framework to start with, some kind of guidelines, and especially even around what folks, what are the limits? Because empowering people is smart. But of course, there's some things that are just red lines and things that we don't do.
Right. So putting the boundaries in place. And that sort of takes us on to another thing I really wanted to talk about, which is trust. Because one of the pieces of advice that helped me in similar high pressure leadership moments was surprisingly simple. Just be there, just be present. Because when things are going sideways, you don't have to have all the answers. You need to be there. And when it comes to giving people boundaries as well, often people I find push boundaries when they don't understand why. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So if I give them the why with the boundary, it's much more likely to be respected. But let's talk about your approach to trust, because it's often the first casualty where people are stressed or tired or overwhelmed. So how do you, in a crisis, how do you hold people together? How do you hold a team together?
A shared goal, outcome, expectations that are realistic. And then the big one I think you and I spoke about before is really making it okay to fail.
Yeah.
And maybe even celebrating that.
Okay.
Reassuring folks that there's nothing you can break that we can't fix, even if that's not true. But having that mindset, the freedom to show up and do something without the absolute fear of, oh, is this the right thing every single step of the way? And if we mess up a little bit, then all right, let's deal with it. And responding in that kind of empathetic way, and then encouraging and receiving that openness, and being like, all right, great, cool, thanks for sharing, and let's dig in and make it right. Even if that means going to the client and saying, hey, we messed up, but this is what we're doing about it. It also, like, trust is everywhere, right?
Trust is in all directions. Yes, I think that's a key point, isn't it?
If we do it right, we're basically just like marinating in trust. And that's when we can do anything.
That's really powerful indeed. And I think when you have that trust, it's much easier for people to say yes, rather than to sort of throw up the barriers and say, no, I can't do that. There's nothing worse when you've got sort of a risk register that's on fire and things are going wrong. People's instinctive response is, no, don't bring me into that. I'll say no, thank you. So, but and when it comes to saying yes, because I know this is one of the themes you absolutely love. It reminds me of a quote from Richard Branson. It was sort of the first thing I thought about, which he says that, if somebody offers you an amazing opportunity, but you're not sure if you can do it, say yes, and then learn how to do it later. And I think he made this quote about 20 years ago or something. So it had an impact on me in my sort of early career as I was learning how to do things. But it isn't always easy, especially when there's, as you mentioned, red lines or the legal, the compliance, the tech can be the constraint. So everything's sort of swirling around. So how can you make a yes be the default answer when you're sort of skating at breakneck and sort of building the plane mid-flight, if you like?
That takes a special human, I think, and I don't know that I have the exact answer. I do know that I have many very vivid memories, really, of just stretches of sidewalk where my head has been down and I'm walking towards a thing and I'm thinking, what am I doing? Like, I am not the guy for this. Am I the guy? Okay, maybe I'm the guy. And by the time I get to where I'm going, I'm like, I'm the guy. But it takes a lot of internal work to get to that showing up. I get a lot of feedback of like, man, you're always the calmest person in the room, or like, what are you doing? Like, always smiling. But it takes a lot of work to get to that point and show up.
So showing up, there's the work, but then by the sounds of it, there's also that internal work as well to overcome the doubt, the monologue, the imposter syndrome, which, I think a lot of us in tech have that sooner or later at some point. Mm-hmm. Am I really, somebody's going to call me out on this? Am I really in the right place?
Right. And I also know that I have done my best to surround myself with the right people, with the right skills, and support me in those things that I may not know. So that's why you mentioned tech and legal, and I love relying on my technologists and my compliance folks. Checking with them first or having them in the room has been a lifesaver for so many.
Bring those specialists in early to the early part of the conversation.
Yeah, sometimes they wonder why they're at the table that early, but and that's only because they've not been included often. They're usually coming in at a thing and then they're so used to saying like, being the person who's saying no, like, oh, that's a tech lift, or, oh gosh, no, we can't do that, or you shouldn't have done that. If we bring them in early enough, they might think, man, like, what am I going to do here? But really they start with that systems thinking, and everyone's like, compliance is looking at risk, and your technologist is like, well, how does that plug into that system? And how does that plug into there? And where are the people coming from in the first place? And like, will you fix this, or what else is going to break? Like, so.
And so therefore using their skills, their background in a way that they're probably not used to, but helping that shape the solution such that the whole thing is able to say yes, rather than having people come in later on and go, no, you built that broken.
Yeah. And sometimes these folks they haven't been given the opportunity to be like maybe strategists. They've been used so much as like a tool, like, oh, that's Corey over there. He's the best hammer. But maybe that's not the best thing for Corey. Like, a great hammer, but you never know. He could have been our architect and should have been.
So, I mean, saying yes is a very powerful concept. And we just spoken about how we get to that point where it can work for more people. But have you ever had a moment when saying yes has either gone wrong or nearly backfired?
No, absolutely. Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And Are you able to tell us about it?
Well, then my mantra is like, well, all right, this will end. Okay. All right. Just keep going, keep moving. All right. Yep. And we might triage. We might start thinking about, okay, how am I going to communicate this? We might go into damage control. And that's when it's really important to still have those people around and be like, hey, yes, that the thing that we said might go this way, it went that way. And now what? And then you're not doing so much catch up as you are just, let's get through this. And that can be, that whether we're building product or systems or, the crisis, it's all the same.
Yeah. And at that point, then it's a case of looking at it afterwards and going, okay, what would we do next time? How would we make a better decision in the future? I'm
a big fan of doing those like living autopsies, like even as we're doing the thing,
Yeah. Oh, so rather than a sort of a post-mortem then, I like that phrase, a living autopsy, looking at it as you go along.
Yeah.
Cool. So, I mean, that's sort of on one hand, sort of the negative side of it. The inspiring bit, and I think that the listeners are going to be most interested in is, when has saying yes helped you to unlock something that you never predicted or didn't expect?
That's all the time. That's when I'm looking in a mirror and I'm looking at myself wearing like medical scrubs. I'm like, this was never supposed to be my life. I'm like swabbing, doing COVID tests of 400 people a day. I'm like, what? This isn't my life. I didn't never wanted to do this. This is not what I imagined on a resume. But yeah, but I'm so grateful to have had those, because I happen to be, in Portugal doing that. So like, why not do that in Portugal instead of, Grand Rapids, Michigan? So that some things, it's taken me some really remarkable places. And I've, of course, met some really remarkable people at the same time.
So being able to meet more people who add to that roster of people you can bring into a team who can help you say yes the next time.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. So, I mean, this is the CTO playbook. So one of the things I'd love to try and do is to boil it down to a few key steps that we can generally use, whether we're walking into a crisis or whether we're just walking into something that's an uncertain situation. So I'd love to get into your playbook, the repeatable stuff. So from your experience of saying yes and going into the chaos, can you walk us through Corey Hart's scaling playbook?
Well, yeah, it starts with that. It's the saying yes, and that helps build a culture of yes around you, which is really important and great. I'm in a project right now that's fun and tough, and we have that around us all the time, every day. And so we're moving fast and doing things that previously may have not been possible. So saying yes is a fantastic thing, and it's also contagious, just like smiles, I guess. Right. And then I really want to make sure, we've talked about this a couple of times, we've touched on this, is just really having the right people around you, not necessarily even the people, but the right functions. And that's when we get into my insistence of, hey, did compliance take a look at this? Did you run this by compliance? Folks are like, why are you so bent on like that boring group? I'm like, just like HR, like, did HR sign off on this? Did you get that approved? Is that really what you want to say? And then also getting the technologists, like the mindset of a strong technologist is really powerful. Not entirely a skill that I have. So have to make up for my weaknesses, right?
Right. Okay. So getting the right skills that creates the team capability that you need. And then by the sounds of it, the processes or procedures for those, the sign off or sort of approval aspects of the work then as well.
Yeah, it's a lot of folks approach things with like how I want to do it. And I find myself going into a lot of different organizations, and I'm able to really fit in by saying, okay, how is it done here? I'm not here necessarily to break everything all at once. Change can happen slowly. I don't have to change everything I don't make it harder on myself.
Yeah. But you're going to go look into everything there is first. I think you call this a curiosity first approach to things, where you go see what there is, figure things out. And what is it that you're generally looking for there? Is there particular things that you're curious about, or is it just generally being curious about the entire situation you're walking into?
Yeah, there's a lot of, okay, what's the situation, and then there is, okay, what do the processes look like, and like who's where, what like the people process. Yeah. People, circumstance, it's a little bit of history. I am curious about how something got to be something like where they're at, but I don't let that drag affect me as much as a lot of folks might. There's like sometimes there's a lot of drag in an organization or in a group or in a situation. But I'm of course looking to create that inertia. And for a while, there's like both are playing at the same time, and it maybe even be healthy. But there's a lot of leaders that are like always talking about how things used to be, or like, we've overcome
it's always been done that way.
Yeah. And I really love the forward-looking, statements.
Cool. And so I think one of the other things that you mentioned the last time we spoke was about how there's a tendency for us to overcomplicate things as well. We tend to try and look at something as more difficult than it necessarily needs to be. So what's your approach to when it comes to simplicity, I guess?
That's just a constant effort, isn't it? Like that's scope creep is so easy. And I'm an innovator at heart, and being curious also is like, oh, well, and then we could do that, and then we could do this, and then we could do that. And well, if you only added this, then it could be that way. So like really encouraging folks and setting the expectation very, very early that this is the box. This is how complicated it's going to get. And anything outside of that is not yet. It is really important to have everyone thinking like that. Cause I'm sure you've been in a situation where you might establish that and everyone gets that as the baseline. And then you turn around like to do something else, you come back, and then it's all of a sudden like spaghetti scope again. Like, who did this? Like,
yeah, all these little questions. Shouldn't we do this? Wouldn't it be cool to do that? How about if we added that? And that's when it comes to saying yes. It's the opposite of saying yes, isn't it? It's making sure we keep the original boundaries. But really in the name of simplicity rather than the name of saying no. Yeah,
there's a phrase. Is it Einstein? I don't know. Is it somebody from Apple? I don't know. Keep it simple, but not too simple.
Oh yeah, so keep it as simple as you can, but only as simple as it needs to be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, I can't attribute it either on the fly. Maybe somebody can look it up for us and one of our listeners can tell us. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the other things I wanted to ask you about as well is in these situations we're going through, we've been asked normally as we go into these difficult situations, a fairly easily described goal or target, which is normally quite easily articulated. But how do we know whether we're sort of heading toward that? What do you look for in terms of? I mean, most people would call it management information.
Sure, I like setting milestones and then really tracking. The data shows us a lot of things. And if we do it right, it can help us maybe see around the corner just a little bit, especially if we've been in a similar situation, like, ooh, this feels like I've been here before. And oh yeah, this data is telling me that my feelings might be right. I love to track everything. And a lot of folks are a little bored, and I also it's really important to start early and start small, and sometimes that's a paper and pen. It's not necessarily waiting for the right tool, but making sure that you're doing the right thing, and then bring the systems alongside or right along with you. So
start with the tracking first. Don't wait for the tracking tool.
or like don't wait for when someone asks you, for the because waiting for when you have to, like, man, we should have really tracked that, or we should know that, or like that's a little too late, and then you're stuck, maybe not wasting some time, but spending some more time than it was necessary, and getting caught up.
Right. Capturing the data you could have had and now tracking where you are versus where you could or should have been. Excellent. So for those things, I mean, let's take, for example, the getting the tech and the legal involved early. I mean, what does that generally look like in practice? I mean, is it as simple as, hey, join this meeting?
It is. Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm. And then, depending on the human, I might let them know what the meeting's about. And other times I'll be like, "Yep, I really just need you in this meeting," because I might want someone to just really come with a complete clean slate, blank piece of paper kind of thinking. And sometimes that will reveal an incredible amount of awareness about maybe some of the challenges, rather than me going in and saying, hey, I'm really worried about this, and I'm really kind of curious about these three things. If I do that, then that person's thinking about those three things and nothing else.
Right. So you lean into the zero assumptions approach with certain people who can come in and just look at it from, would you call it a blank sheet of paper approach? Mm-hmm. I like that. Yeah. That's really good.
Yeah. So some folks they just see the meetings pop up on the calendar, and other folks get a sort of a last minute, like, hey, can you pop in here? It's all fun. At the end of the day, let's just have fun with this.
And just to wrap up in general, then, when we get to the end of these difficult, terrifying sort of edge of those situations, what's the moment at which you, as a yes person, as a crisis specialist, ends up stepping out? What does conclusion look like to you generally? Is there a pattern to that?
Well, that can look a lot of different ways. A project may decide that it's over before we're ready for it to be over. Okay. Sometimes there is that clear scope, and you're like, oh, well, we did it. All right, good. Oh, fantastic. It's done. And you may want to move forward and do something else, but that's just, it is what it is, and you kind of have to walk away. That's where I've been really lucky to really kind of have a good understanding, or have been bent towards building those expectations. Like, this is it. This is the end of the line. And then when we get there, it's okay. That was it. Awesome.
Scope done. Jump on the plane.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
I try, and of course, early in a career, I made the mistake of, well, as long as it takes kind of approach. And a project that is given as long as it takes will take as long as it takes. It'll often take forever. And, its budget may explode or whatnot.
There is a name to that principle, isn't it? Where work will expand to fill the space that's permitted for it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, so let's try and summarize then, if we can, and I'll take the liberty of trying to summarize your approach into a playbook, and you can correct me if I get it wrong or if there's anything that we need to add to it. But number one, first and foremost, say yes. You never know what's going to happen. Second step, remain curious. Look at all the pieces, look at all the angles. Get some people to come in with a blank sheet of paper view of it. Number three. And you mentioned this, I don't know, at least 5 times through the last few minutes, is get the right people on the team. Number 4, get specialists like tech and legal involved early in the process so that they can help with the strategy, not just with the gatekeeping. Where we're up to 5 was keep it simple. Because I think at the end of the day, the scope needs to be constrained, and doing that and just that is fairly important to being able to say, okay, we're done. And then number 6 was track. Gather the data early on and track where you're going. Did we miss anything out of that?
Well, that sounds great. Thank you for doing that. I have to write that down.
Sounds like there's a book in there somewhere, right?
Right.
Corey, it's been absolutely wonderful to speak to you today. This is a bit of a masterclass in how to approach a crisis without losing your mind. How can people get hold of you?
Yeah, it's fairly easy. All my handles, my website is Corey the Hart, Corey, the THE, Hart, HART. So Corey the Hart. You can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, all the things.
And it's the same with your website as well, CoreyTheHart.com.
CoreyTheHart.com.
Very memorable. Excellent. So one of the things I do love to ask everybody just before they go and finish the episode here is, if you had one leadership lesson that you wished you'd learned 10 years ago that you would give to any new leader, in my case, new CTOs, what would that one be?
Understand that you do have the power and permission to advocate for your team and for what you need. A lot of leaders get really stuck in this, like, oh, these are the resources we got, or this is, we don't have room for another dev, or we don't have room for this person, or like there's no budget for sandwiches today. But advocating for the team, and sometimes you got to go to leadership and have the tough conversations. So like, I see this down the road. I'm here to ask for X, and I'm not walking out of this room without it. That goes a long way with your team and getting that in the trenches trust that we were talking about. That's
a wonderful piece. Exactly. I was just about to mention that. That is a very key piece of building that trust that the whole team can rely on you and that you're going to be there for them.
Mm-hmm.
Corey, thank you very much for your time. It's been great speaking to you.
Likewise, Adam. I really appreciate this.
Thank you for listening to the whole episode. I appreciate your time. So just before you go, I'd like to ask you for a favor in return for putting together this episode of the CTO Playbook for you. Please share the episode with just one person who will appreciate it. Wherever you're listening, whether that is Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or another platform, sharing the episode will help more CTOs find the podcast and enable me to create more great content. Remember that you can find more information on the CTOplaybook.com. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of the CTO Playbook.